my sister has a mantra of no regrets, of, not to have regrets. So if you feel like you should do something, go ahead and do it if you can. But then also realize that you can't possibly do everything.
Right.
But I think that, being there for those little moments, sometimes when you don't feel like you're doing anything, you're holding somebody's hand and you're just sitting there for hours, that still does a lot. It does a lot for them. It does something for you as well to, just feel that connection and that presence.
Welcome to the Alls Authors Podcast. We're so glad you found us. We're the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. I'm Marianne Sciucco, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter.
And I'm Christy Byrne Yates, a licensed educational psychologist, dementia daughter, Al's author, and coach focused on the sandwich generation. Please join us for bi-weekly episodes with our authors as we talk about their dementia journeys, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help others currently on that path.
We hope these stories offer you comfort and support as we strive to break the silence and stigma surrounding a dementia diagnosis.
May one of our authors speak to your experience.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hi, I'm Jean Lee from Alls Authors. All the resources we offer at allsauthors.com, including this podcast, are brought to you free of charge. Our management team is a dedicated group of passionate volunteers who earn no financial compensation. But to continue our mission to provide valuable resources to dementia caregivers, we need the support of listeners like you. If you'd like to support us, please make a donation at allsauthors.com/donate. We are a 501c3 organization. Remember, you are not alone.
Hi, it's Marianne. Welcome back to the podcast. Christy is not here with me today as she's traveling, and I miss her already. She'll be back next time. I have a lovely guest for you, Marjorie Maddox, a poet who's published 17 collections of poetry, including Seeing Things, her latest, based on her experiences with her mother's dementia journey. We were joined by Sheila Luna, the acquisitions editor who brought Marjorie's book into our collection. The three of us are all English majors who practice the art of poetry and prose in various ways for countless reasons and are connected not only through our love of words, but our experiences as daughters of Alzheimer's and dementia. Marjorie not only shared her story, but read several of her poems aloud, a gift to all. After the podcast, you may want to read the exclusive blog post she wrote for Alls Authors, which is posted on our website, allsauthors.com. Now, on to the show. Hi, Marjorie. Welcome to Alls Authors Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're so thrilled to welcome you into Alls Authors and to share your beautiful book with the world. And you're one of our poets now. We do have several poets. For those people who like poetry, we do have several poets at Alls Authors. And we're going to talk about your beautiful book, Seeing Things, today, which was brought to us through Sheila Luna, our acquisitions editor, who is the one who was in contact with you and read your book and decided that it would be a great fit for us. So, Sheila, welcome. Welcome to the
Hi.
podcast. She is joining us today. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about why you thought Marjorie's book would be a good addition to our collection.
Yeah, so I was really thankful to that I got to read and review Seeing Things for All Authors. I wasn't sure about reviewing poetry because I'm more of a nonfiction writer and essayist. Um, but I just found it to be beautiful. And these poems are based on personal experience and personal experience with caregiving and dementia and loss and grief and everything that goes along with dementia and caregiving. And I know that caregivers out there, and even those who aren't caregivers, will relate to this
Mhm.
book and to your poems. I found them beautifully moving and relatable. And kind of when you read poetry, it kind of holds up a mirror to yourself, and you kind of get to know yourself a little bit better and how you deal with things and hard things and trauma and things like that. And reading poetry can be, especially your poetry, can be another way of taking care of ourselves. Sitting down with one of those poems, I found myself becoming part of the poem. But I admit they were a little hard to read sometimes because having gone through these feelings of just going through the dementia journey and losing your loved ones to dementia, I had a hard time reading some of the poems, even though they're very the language is so gripping and moving that you can't not read. So I found myself reading over and over again and becoming part of the poem. Um, so caregiving, can it encompasses all these emotions, sadness and guilt and grief and depression and things like that. And they can all happen at the same time too. You can have joy and guilt at the same time. And I found that your poems that had that conglomeration of emotions all in one poem. But in each poem, I felt that there was a little bit of light. There was a like a slice of light in each poem, a little bit of joy that shone through the poems. And I think that joy and that light is love because love and human connection can get you through these hard times, even if your parent doesn't know you anymore or something. They know you're there and you're holding hands and your poem was just kind of revealed that to me. Yeah, so the subjects are complicated and it's like your poems are the snapshot to these complicated scenarios. Like you read a book, but the poem is just right there, and it has every emotion. And but some of these do have joy and light in them too. I also noticed in a lot of your poems repetition of words and phrases. Like one poem, it might have the same word repeated throughout and it provides a rhythm and maybe underscores a theme. But it made me think about people with dementia repeat stories, repeat words. And so it made me think about that. And it made me think about how repetition and routine is so important sometimes in people with dementia. Like, now we're going to go to dinner, or now I know this person's going to come over and see me. They go by the routine. So to me, I read the poems that way, and it was very comforting to me to have that repetition. So that kind of like provided a comfort. And one of the poems that I really liked was Dusk, and that had the repetition in there as well. Dusk is very quiet and sort of like the worries are put aside. And the word no was repeated, I noticed in that poem. And it's like she knows she might not know who she is, or she might not know who this person is sitting next to her, but she knows she's okay. And to me, that said it all right there. She's comforted. She knows she's okay. So that word was kind of repeated in that poem. And I really like that. So I know that this collection is going to provide a great addition to all authors and to caregivers that are going through dementia. Um, Stepping into one of your poems is just like we're with you, and it's almost like an embrace. Like we're going through the same thing together because your language is just so beautiful. Um, yeah. So, I mean, I really liked a lot of your poems. The one that you wrote about the fall in the assisted living home, that was my greatest fear. My mother falling. And this poem, I think it's called, it's got a long title. A few minutes after a fall in her assisted living facility, my mother forgets. It begins really stark and kind of cold and quiet and sad. And as the poem goes on, she gets up. I mean, she is saved from the fall, and then there's no cold tile, there's no aid. The daughter is beside her, holding her hand, and she forgets what happened. And to me, that's in a way that's nice. It provided a little comfort. I think the last line was, "She is alive again, only in the moment. Is it enough?"
Mm.
I mean, it could go either way, but to me, that was comforting. It's enough. She knows she's okay. She's with her daughter. She forgot about the fall. So yeah, just the poem just provides that comfort. And then there were a couple other poems I liked too, that the odes, Ode to Exhaustion and Ode to Almost Silence, were almost for caregivers kind of meditative, like sitting down and taking a deep breath. The Ode to Exhaustion speaks to caregivers who have no time for themselves.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like sit down, take a deep breath, meditate a little bit. Ode to Almost Silence. Sometimes all we want is a quiet house, just to get away. So I really like those two. All of these poems are they're so different, but they all speak to caregivers and to what they're going through. I
Wow.
mean, they're sometimes they must have been hard for you to write because they do deal with really sad things like nursing homes and the one about the diagnosis. I mean, that what is that called? After the diagnosis or something. Oh, after the diagnosis, I totally relate to that poem as well because we all have our experiences with the medical community, doctors that don't really pay much attention, and we just want answers. We want them to help. But I like that. I love the line. Oh, her blood cell count swimming swiftly towards death and lawsuit.
Mm.
I just because I've had those moments where I feel like suing them sometimes. So that really spoke to me too.
Well, as a poet and as a person, these are some of the nicest words that I could hear because you're right, you do feel so isolated when you're going through it. And I was just trying to capture my moments, but it's very gratifying and I guess comforting to hear that other people can understand that and that it can help them as well, that it might capture a bit of their experience as well as my own.
Mhm.
Because there's so much overlap, right, in what we're going through. And as you were talking about that um, confluence of all these different emotions and trying to kind of sort them out and yet still trying to keep a little bit of that joy, a little bit of that hope, so you're not going under because sometimes it feels like you're going under. Um,
Yes. And
yeah.
that's why poetry is really, really, like Marianne said, sometimes you don't have time to read a book, but you just want that little
Mhm.
escape into something else that's beautiful and really touches your heart.
Mhm.
Um, and I can tell you worked really hard on these poems because they're very well written and really tug at your heartstrings.
Thank you.
Um, Deeply personal, and I thought it was interesting that they're all very personal. You wrote about your daughter, your father, your mom, you, but I thought it was really interesting that you included a couple poems that were not related to you, but more like related to the world, like the mass shooting and
Mhm.
the cave rescue. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was wondering if you were, trying to show like the world's loss or the world's grief or something like that.
I think that I've been really interested in, well, there's three generations of women. So the daughter, myself as the daughter of a mother going through the early stages of dementia, mother of a daughter struggling with depression, woman kind of surviving her own background of abuse and survival, but then also this very blurry line that we have in society now between truth and lie. So when you're
Mm,
thinking of, seeing things and seeing things clearly, it really applies in all these categories. Um, but yeah, I was thinking about, all this taking place then in a society where things are kind of blurry now, so, that becomes part of the context as well. You also mentioned the use of repetition. I thought that was really interesting because I did find myself using some more fixed forms like the villanelle and the sestina and the pantoum form, where you do have the repetition of lines or repetition of phrases, because to me it did seem to kind of speak towards that, what could be a kind of regimented ritual of the day that keeps people grounded, especially during the dementia journey, um, but also gives some freedom within it. So, those boundaries help give you a container for some of these emotions as well. And all of that helps you empathize with other people and what they're going through, I think. Yeah. So thank you for the
definitely.
comments.
Oh, yes, you're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Marjorie, and like our listeners to hear about your academic accomplishments and a little bit about your caregiving journey.
Well, I am recently retired after teaching for 34 years, I think,
Wow.
at State University in Pennsylvania. My husband and I, who also teaches at a nearby university, or just retired from a nearby university. Um, so I taught English and creative writing and intro to literature, a Pennsylvania authors course. Um, I've just come out as a co-editor of an anthology called Commonwealth. No, sorry, that was the first version. Keystone Poetry, Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania. So right now we're going around the state talking about poetry. But I started writing when I was just a kid. I had my first poem published in a Campfire Girl magazine at the age of
Oh,
8.
wow.
It was terrible. But I write poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction, and children's literature. So I like to kind of spread myself around, mostly poetry, though. And I love the way it helps you connect with others, helps you see the world, see yourself differently, find out what you think. Um, my dementia journey, primarily with my mother, kind of long distance. My sister was the primary caregiver in Phoenix. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So my mother, as she got worse, moved near my sister into assisted living facility, and my sister would go and visit her every day in Phoenix. I would get out as often as I could, um, which is difficult for the long journey with an academic schedule, but I'd go out a number of times each year, but also really speak with my mother every day. So I spent a lot of time talking with her on the phone, particularly when I'd go on walks around the neighborhood or sit in the backyard, and I may read some poems about that. My father-in-law was visiting once and had a stroke while he was at our house and ended up in a facility near us. And so my husband and I would visit him most days. My husband would go every day, and I would go often. And he also experienced dementia. And then my mother's second husband, after my father died, he had Alzheimer's. So
Mhm.
uh, several different types of experiences, but involved in all of them to one degree or another.
Mm.
And
I,
much of this happened during COVID too, so that complicated things as well.
Oh,
oh, for
yeah,
sure.
that's hard.
I too had the experience of being the caregiver to a stepfather, and we don't really have see a lot of that story in Al's authors, I guess. But what was that like? And for me, it was, my mom, it was her second husband. My father had died when I was young. And my stepfather, he didn't have any family. He had no children. So there was nobody else to step forward to care for him. And my objective was to protect my mother and to ensure that her life wouldn't change too much when he was diagnosed with mixed dementia and ended up in a nursing facility. So that was kind of my take on it. I mean, not. I mean, I took care. I did everything I was supposed to do, but I was kind of, emotionally detached from it. How was it for you?
I think in many ways it was a support to my husband to be there as well. But I think it also was in some ways healing to me because my father had died after an unsuccessful heart transplant, and I wasn't able to be there when he died. I
Mhm.
got there too late, and so I was with my father-in-law when he died, and I think it helped just to be able to be there as much as possible, and not to make up for, but to feel like I was doing something when I didn't feel like I could have done it. I didn't do as much. I don't know how to explain. I regretted not being there at the end, even though I tried to be there at the end with my father. Um,
Mm.
so it was helpful for me to at least be able to have my father-in-law 5 minutes away, and that I could visit, when I needed to, and just hold his hand. And I don't have a great voice, but I would sing when he was kind of dozing, and be there when my husband couldn't be there, especially if he was out of town, or
Mhm.
just accompanying him. And so that was helpful, and I think it was a nice bonding for my father-in-law and myself too. My kids were close to my father-in-law, and they were not at home during the time because they were in college and etc. Um, but I could help facilitate phone calls and things like that, and kind of keep the family together.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, my dad died. He had a heart attack and he died like a couple of days later in the ICU. So I never really got to say goodbye. And when my stepfather died, he died unexpectedly.
Mm,
And I had seen him on Wednesday, and I was a long distance caregiver to him. I had a 250-mile drive to go to see
Right.
them. But I went every month or more than that if I had to. But I had seen him on Wednesday and he died on Saturday. So he was alone at the time. So I was really shocked when I got that phone call from the hospice people. So yeah, everybody's journey is different.
mhm.
There's so many things, similarities and things in common that people share about caregiving, but every single relationship and every single experience is unique.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you try to be there, you can't do everything, but you still
No.
feel like you're supposed to, or you should be able to, but you do
Yeah.
have to
And then
set
you have
yourself.
those feelings of, oh, I wish I had done that. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I wish I had done that. I wish I had done more of that. So, I mean, that's a lesson learned going forward with other people, like you said. Um, yeah.
Right. Okay. Did
But you
anything
can't
put
hold it. You can't be guilty. You can't hold on to that
No,
guilt.
it
It
doesn't
happens.
it doesn't help anybody.
No,
No,
But
not at
we're
all.
human, and that's what we do.
we're humans. Yeah.
Did anything prepare you to be a caregiver? Were you the oldest daughter?
I'm the middle child, so
Okay.
I have an older brother and a younger sister. So my brother is 2 years older, and he lived kind of close to my mom in Columbus, Ohio. He was about an hour away, but also had a very busy kind of schedule, and didn't have a lot of good facilities near him. So um, my sister really kind of took the bull by its horn and got my mom out to Phoenix, and she's wonderful. But she also kind of had the time to kind of dig in and just be there every day, and it probably was the best choice. But it made it harder in some ways because I couldn't just drive. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, and when she was in Ohio, my mom was in Ohio. I could drive and see her on the weekends. Um, But one incident that happened when my mother was still in Ohio, she was in an independent living facility, and she I think she had a blood clot or something in her leg. For some reason, she was taken to the ER in the middle of the night. And my sister and I both got a phone call, and she um, got this ER dementia, I guess that you
Hmm.
probably know something about that. And on top of all that, my mother, who was a teetotaler, never drank anything. They gave her a medicine for DTs, for
Oh my
delirium
God.
tremors, for some reason. I think they asked her some question, and she said she drank a bottle of whiskey or something crazy, which she never does, would have done. And it just threw her over the cliff into dementia. So I was going to, if you like, I was going to read a poem about that experience.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So my mother is very polite. And one of the things I think that's hard in dementia is sometimes the person takes on different personality traits, right? So
Mhm.
all of a sudden, this calm, sweet woman who never, said a negative word, she was, not very polite to some people. But well, but they also like strapped her down in a, she was thrashing around and all kinds of things. So, anyways, this is the poem. It's called Manners. Um, and it's about when she was in the ER and then admitted with this dementia, and she didn't recognize my sister or myself, but she did compliment me on what a good journalist I was because I seemed to know so much about myself. So there's a little bit of humor in there too. Manners. Always a lady, she compliments the hospital bed and its ups and downs, the gray mashed beans, the flavorless broth, and me, who knows so very much about myself, an excellent researcher, to have discovered her writer daughter, who also, coincidentally, is named my name, which she's always loved. Don't I love it too? Such a small world, she murmurs, before asking me to please pass the no salt. Salt. She shivers. I help her tug the thin cover up evenly to her chin. When my sister returns to the room with a newly warmed blanket, and the nurse she has gone to fetch then sits with me again at the bed rail, my polite mother asks, "Have you met my other daughter, the beautiful one?" Yes, I nod. She's lovely. When her mind and body again thrash violently, and for her own protection, the aides explain, they strap her into a straitjacket. My mother pleads with us to find her daughters who are always happy to help. Thank you so much, she smiles, before glaring at us suddenly with someone else's impolite eyes. Always a lady, my mother does not know that she's not who she is at the moment, swearing at the nurses she thinks are strangling her, at the intern who surely has stolen her car, the one we will take away for her own protection. After the MRI and CAT scan, after the final diagnosis, common infection that hijacked her brain temporarily, which she will not remember when she returns to her polite small talk, to the well-mannered children she recognizes and calls by names, the names she's always loved. Don't we love them too? And she eventually, after they were able to calm her down and give her the MRI and give her the proper treatment, she returned kind of to herself. But this was kind of a precursor to the dementia and gave us a little bit of a taste of what was, happening. Because she wasn't always like this, even when she got the dementia. As you know, there's good days and bad days, days where everything seems normal, and then you walk in the next day and, um, the person doesn't remember that you've been there for a week visiting. So, um,
Right.
but
Oh, that poem was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. What were some of the more difficult tasks that you faced as a caregiver?
I think, Well, gee, there's patience, right? And repeating things and
Mm.
the making sure that she got proper things to eat, getting that insure down. I remember, her just kind of glaring at me sometimes saying, "I don't think I like you anymore," because she didn't want to have any more insure or didn't want to take another bite of something, but we were worried that she was going to be dehydrated
Mhm.
and things like that. Um, and I think also just losing those shared memories, things that you would talk about quite a bit together and the person not necessarily in this case, my mother, not necessarily remembering them. That was always kind of hard, I think.
Mhm. Mhm. And what you
Sometimes the
described,
memories are,
go ahead,
oh, I was going
Sheila.
to say, sometimes those memories are good too. Like when my mom, she hated to take a shower. She just
Mhm.
did not want to go in the shower.
Mhm.
So my nieces and my brothers and I, we'd make up songs to try to get her in the shower and try to play games with her to get her in there. And, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But those were kind of joyous memories for us as a family, trying to get her in the shower. And then she'd go in the bathroom and then we'd let her in there on her own. She'd turn the water on, but she didn't. She was tricking us. She turned the water on, but she didn't take a shower.
My character did that in my
So
novel.
funny. Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
people are like, the shower is not a good happy place for a lot of people with dementia. They don't like the water. They don't like the feel of the water against their skin. It hurts. And
Hmm.
a lot of times, if they're being, showered by somebody that they don't know, that is just an affront to their modesty and their privacy. So that too. And then a lot of shower rooms have mirrors or where they see a reflection of themselves and they may not recognize that person.
Mm.
Yeah,
And that scares them too. So those are like three good reasons why people might be reluctant to get into a shower. Um,
yeah,
and then they wrap themselves up in clothing that they're comfortable in, and they don't want to remove it, and then to put something else on. That can always be a challenge. Sometimes I like to wear the same thing for
yeah.
like days on end, and it can be filthy. They could have been incontinent and things like that. So then that's another battle too. So yeah, and these are all situations that are common amongst to almost all of us that are in this situation.
And that changing of roles, so
Mm,
you become the parent in many ways, and then that's hard for them too, to realize that they're not they're not exactly in the same role as mom or dad or whatever, as they were before, and they're having to rely on you for that kind of
right.
care.
They were the authority.
Yeah.
And I had a great relationship with my mother, and she always respected me, and she, always sought my counsel on like many, many things. She, was very willing to like, go along with a lot of the things that I had to take control over at the time. And I mean, I didn't like doing it either, but it was for her protection too, as well. And she didn't have dementia. It was her husband that had the dementia. So I know it's really hard to, and then also everybody else has to like respect your new role as well. So do you have a sister, but do you have any other siblings?
I have a brother. I have an older brother. He
What was
was a
his role?
um he took on a lot of the financial things for her.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
he had a huge role, but my sister and I were more the kind of the emotional support,
Mhm.
but we couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah, that was my role too. Like as a long distance person, I wasn't there every day, and to do what needed to be done. They were like my mother had her niece living with her, and then she had care coming to the home, and he was in a nursing home, so we had that going. But took care of all of the business aspects and managing the finances and everything, and
Yeah,
the
that was.
legal things and the communications with the physicians and the agencies. So that was a lot.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, like long distance caregivers often don't get, the respect that they deserve because they're not considered hands on.
Oh
There's a
no.
lot. There's a lot in the whole situation that people are lucky if they have somebody to assume a big part of the responsibility like that. Someone that they can trust and that they can, work with.
Mhm. But my sister was there every day, and she has beautiful dog that she would take and also see all the other residents. And that was, I think, helped not
Yes.
just to my mother, but to everybody there. And she's just started going back. She has a new dog and has just decided to go back and visit some people there. And it's really brightened their days too. Took a while because it was painful to go back, without my mother there anymore.
Hmm.
But she
Hmm.
waited a few years and then she decided she wanted to take on that role again. So kudos.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. And I mean, those are the people that are in our organization, are people who, after their journey ended and they had time to recuperate and absorb what happened, then they know that they have this, treasure trove of information that they need to share.
Mhm.
They don't want to just let it, waste away inside them, and then they write their books or
Mhm.
they do their poems or their films or their blogs or
Or bring
whatever.
their animal.
Yeah, they get it out
Yeah.
there, and then they just want, and they'll say, if I could just help one person, then it would have been worth it. Because this is very hard won knowledge, how to
Yes.
be a caregiver.
Yeah.
And the one thing we hear most often than anything from people is, I wish I knew about, this, meaning all authors or the podcast or a book. I wish I knew about it when I was taking care of my mother. What a difference that would have
Yeah,
made.
that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, Sheila said that.
Yeah, I said that.
People, yeah,
Yeah.
people are looking for, but a lot of times they find it when it's too late.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, let me
You know,
see.
one of the ways I give back sort of is I'm a long-term care ombudsman for Area Agency on Aging. And the reason I'm doing this because of some people don't have family at all.
Right.
They're in these homes, these care homes, and they don't have family. And I'm there to advocate for them because they don't have anybody to speak for them. A lot of them have memory care issues. So I am doing that to give back, sort of in honor of my mom and father-in-law that
Yeah.
went through that. So
Yeah, it keeps you connected with the your own beloved people. So.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Right. It's a tribute to them.
Mhm.
A lot of authors will say that their story was a tribute to their parent, or they want to write a story. They want to write the family story down so other people will know what happened, the people coming along later on. So that's important too. So, Marjorie, what do you wish people who have not encountered dementia in their lives knew about the disease? What would you tell them?
I think, that it kind of keeps surprising you. There's no complete way to prepare for it. Um, and just to spend as much time, as you can with the person within, still giving yourself some breaks. My sister has a mantra of no regrets, of, not to have regrets. So if you feel like you should do something, go ahead and do it if you can. But then also realize that you can't possibly do everything.
Right.
But I think that, being there for those little moments, sometimes when you don't feel like you're doing anything, you're holding somebody's hand and you're just sitting there for hours. That still does a lot. It does a lot for them. It does something for you as well to, just feel that connection and that presence. And I think that is important. I think the daily phone calls that I had with my mother. Sometimes it was hard to get somebody on the other end to, put the phone up to her ear or to make sure that she could answer it, but just to be able to have that continuity, even when I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there in person, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk on the phone. And I think, we'd always talked a fair amount during my life, but to have it be every day was kind of a blessing as well. Um, and it kind of freed me to tell her some things that maybe I wouldn't have told her otherwise. And she was very accepting, and she's always been a good mom, but it was just nice to just have that continuity, I think. So I guess no regrets and do as much as you can, but also give yourself some slack.
Well, yeah, giving yourself slack, that's really important. And don't want to hold yourself on unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, you can't possibly do all of it. And that was a little frustrating with my academic schedule because by the time I'd fly to I couldn't fly for a long weekend um,
All right.
from Pennsylvania to Phoenix, and but I tried to go over the breaks and do what I
Mm-hmm.
uh, but send little surprises in the mail, little things like that. Kind of, I think, kind of help both of you. And it was nice that I had, siblings who we all worked together. I think that would be very difficult if you didn't. And I know a lot of people do have that situation where they're the
Right.
person who does all of it. Um, and that would be very frustrating. And I can see how, there would be anger and,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of just, it would just be hard, very hard. So,
Yeah. It is very hard. And we have a lot of that stories like that in our collection where people say, well, I just want to remember her the way she was and just bow out. You either have that or you have the people who fight you at every turn. That's kind of
when you say,
the other
I
side of
want to
it.
remember the way that she was, that reminds me of one poem that maybe I'll read. Um,
Yeah.
my mother had plastic surgery when she was 65 before she remarried after my dad died. And so, then I got used to the new face. It wasn't that different, but I well, maybe I'll read that poem. I had the question about which face do I remember now? The face
Hmm.
that I grew up with and the face that I see in photo albums, but now, it's kind of a little bit different face. So I have a lot of poems about, let me see if I can find where this one is. A lot of poems about memory and the kind of fluidness of memory, um, how things change throughout. But this one is called Self-Portrait as Memory. Her eyes blur with what once was, gray matter tinted with doubt. She remembers her skin before her face was lifted, and the cheek her son kissed as a toddler in the morning light. But this rearrangement by age and scalpel claims a scenario skewed, old photos just off center of today's snap click. Her daughter's nose not quite hers anymore, and the stories she hears settling in ears that first knew a few centimeters of shift when the slack of neck was stretched up and over. Even this alters the telling of the yet unfolding, reframes the refractions of light as she leaves daily her downsized apartment through its unbreakable glass door, which now shimmers her familiar reflection alongside such new, strange questions. Is this the face her children remember when remembering before, or is it the other? Um,
Hmm.
so, I was thinking of that a little bit too after she died, and I was kind of looking through all these images and these photo albums, um, and I'd kind of forgotten. I was like comparing myself to the way she looked when she was younger, and I could see that resemblance there. My mother, whenever someone would say, "Oh, you guys look just alike," she would say, "Really?" So I wasn't sure how to take that. Um, but uh, but then I would go back in the photo albums and I say, "Yeah, there is that resemblance there." And when she had the plastic surgery done, she had gone out to Phoenix to do it with my sister, and she didn't tell me because she knew that I would not have approved, because I would have probably been nervous about, her undergoing that kind of surgery. Um, but she was pleased, and that was important to her. And um, but I then thought about it later about this change, and what do you remember, and how do you hold it in your mind that way?
What were the changes that she made to her appearance?
I think mostly her face looked thinner. She was very
Hmm.
thin before she died. The last few years, she was very thin anyways. Um, but and the cheeks maybe looked a little bit different. Um,
Hmm.
so
Why? What did she say why she wanted to do that
I think
at
that
that time?
no, I think that she's her generation and the family she grew up with. I think that I always put um, a lot of emphasis on appearance and being
Hmm.
dressed nicely. And so I think it was just maybe part of her personality, which I kind of like, I'm not as into that. So, but it kind of went along with her personality, but I didn't think it was worth the risk of the surgery and stuff at the time. So I would have tried to talk her out of it, but she did that. And that's she did that, and that's at about the age that I am now. So I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind and take after my mom, but no, not really, not really. um, but yeah,
Yeah, well, it seems to be something, in these days that people are indulging,
yeah,
is getting
yeah,
work done.
yeah.
Yeah,
This
because you don't,
a
nobody
while.
wants to get old. You want to
Yeah,
stay young for as long as you can,
right.
Mm,
but it sounds painful and things can go wrong when you
right.
have the,
Yeah,
but good for her. She went after what she wanted. So
yeah. She
that's,
she went after what she wanted, and so.
Mm,
oh,
it's fascinating.
But it's funny, how you adjust. You adjust to
Hmm.
yeah.
seeing the person differently, and then I remembered a little bit more when I went back through some of those old photographs and saw the slight differences. But
Hmm. Did you have another poem you would like to read?
sure, I think I'll read the dusk one that Sheila mentioned, and then also maybe the one about the shower that she
Oh,
mentioned.
yeah.
So this is a sonnet, um, but I think the title dusk kind of speaks to that whole idea of seeing things or not being able to see things clearly, and that in-betweenness with dementia as well. Dusk. The way the clouds hang low, it could be noon or late fall. She doesn't know the season or the time. In her mind, the days make room for meals, for bathroom trips. No reason to remember where, why. She knows someone will arrive to take her there, will prepare the necessary plans, will know the when of her leaving, the coat she'll need to wear to brace herself from cold. Perhaps it's snow that filters out the light. Perhaps it's dusk, the long chill drawing close. And yet she hopes it's spring, late day, the world's worries hushed as she slips now towards sleep. Always the gray darkens to night. She does not know the day.
Mm.
And the other one that Sheila mentioned is one of the more terrifying moments that I had. I was as I mentioned, much of this happened with my mother during COVID, so I wasn't able to go and see her for a long time, even when I had those spaces like over the summer, and etc. But once I was able to finally go back to Phoenix and spend a couple weeks at her facility with her. Once I was in her living room area, and an aide was helping give her a shower, and I heard this clatter and fall. And my mother had been very soaped up and had slipped through the aide's arms and had fallen on the floor head
Mm.
first. So I went running in, and this is kind of what happened. And this is a form called a pantoum, where it repeats some of the lines. So you'll hear that sense of urgency kind of come through. A few moments after a fall at her assisted living facility, my mother forgets. The tepid shower, how her body tipped backwards off the stool, over the tub, head smacking bathroom tile. The surprised aide reaches too late the frail body, tries to rewind time. The fallen body back in the tub on the stool. The second before the aide is soaping the thin torso. The second after she is reaching too late the frail body sprawled on the cold floor. The daughter comes running. The second before the aide soaps the thin torso, turns to adjust the spray, then the clatter, the naked woman sprawled on the cold floor, the daughter running in from the other room, afraid, whose face is screaming. Turning to adjust the shower spray, the aide hears the clatter, her hands slippery. She cannot catch the woman, or, afraid, face the one from the other room. Every face is screaming. Is there blood? Is she breathing? Lift and cradle her. Her hands slippery, she cannot catch the woman whose every bone protrudes. Will they break? Is there blood? Is she breathing? Lift and cradle her. She is as light as a corpse. Her every bone protrudes. Did they break? Old woman, hold me tight. Smile at your daughter. You are as light as a corpse, but yourself, alive enough to forget everything. The old woman smiles at the daughter, holds tight the aide who carries her to safety, dries her, puts her to bed. Alive, she is enough herself to forget everything. After the fall, she is dried, carried safely to bed. The rest fades. No head smacking the tile, no surprised aide. She is herself, alive, a daughter beside her. It is enough. No tepid shower, her body tipping, no cold tile, no surprised aid. Safe in bed, the rest fades. Tepid memories tip. After the fall, she forgets. She is alive again, only in the moment. Is it enough? And as Sheila was saying, what happened afterwards is I was so upset, and worried that she was okay, that the aide was very upset and worried that she was okay. Um, and it was an accident. Um, but my mother forgot everything within 10 minutes. She didn't remember any of it at all. And so it was kind of a blessing, in some ways, but also surreal at the same time, you know. So
And for a moment there, you're just so worried and the adrenaline and just your whole body is just probably just shaking because you're so worried about did she break something?
Mm-hmm.
So and then that kind of fades away too because she's okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I was the aide. I mean, that never happened to me, but I used to be the one helping in the
Well,
showers and doing all of that. And I mean, that would be like terrifying if
oh yeah,
you'd be so afraid that, you would cause this person's demise or injury and, might lose your job. And it's just like a lot going on. Everybody, the stakes are so high for everyone involved. And it's a small thing too, you
yeah.
think about it, it's
And the aide did the right thing. She called the people she was supposed to call. She reported it. She had somebody else come in and check her out. But you're still like, you know,
well, yeah. I mean, anybody like that frail, like, to break bones or to have a head injury or something like that could have been, the beginning of the end.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so scary. And then, of course, the places are worried and concerned about, being cited by the state or being sued or all that. Somebody said something about a lawsuit earlier. What were you talking about? Was that you, Sheila? About a
yeah.
poem? Was there a
Well, the
poem?
poem was after the diagnosis,
mm,
where you don't have the medical community kind of does something wrong, and the family members just are so mad they want to sue.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I've been in that situation, but that spoke to me too, that poem.
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Well, that happened to me too with my mom, and they misdiagnosed her after she was in a car accident and broke a lot of bones. And they said she broke a rib and sent her home, and she broke her clavicle or shoulder or several
Oh my
ribs. She was a
gosh.
mess. I was so livid. And my thing was, if they had just admitted her to the hospital, she could have probably gone to rehab if she had had that little 3 day stay. She was entitled to it with all the broken bones that she had.
mm.
But we missed that opportunity. So there's like always something. And Marjorie, you mentioned COVID a few times. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because we still have COVID. I know that a lot of people want to believe that it's in the past, but it's very present. What was that like for you?
Well, it just added another layer of difficulty, of course, because then when I could go see her, she wasn't allowed out to see anybody, and even took quite a while before they were able to wheel her outside so that she could wave to my sister, across the kind of courtyard or whatever at the assisted living facility. Um, but yeah, that was, difficult. I could still talk to her on the phone, and I did, talk to her often from our backyard, and maybe I'll read a poem about that as well. But yeah, that was just really hard because I was worried about her. I was glad that they were being safe and protecting her, but I was worried about her being in her little tiny room the entire time without really seeing anybody. And, before she had at least had my sister to see in person, when she couldn't, when I couldn't get there. But, um, there were no dining room
Mm.
excursions. There were no, events. And the nursing home, had lots of different events going on so that you could socialize with people. And my mother liked that. So, um, yeah, that was
And the residents don't
many
really
levels.
understand why.
No,
I mean, a
Right.
lot of them just, why am I being secluded?
yeah, you
Where
almost
is
feel like you're being
everybody?
punished
Where's,
somehow. I mean, I think
Right.
that
yeah,
she trusted us enough but you'd have to keep explaining it over and over again, and time, time just took on all different shapes, right? Yeah, it just seemed like forever. Um, even a day can seem like forever when you're in there all by yourself, or you're in and out of sleep, or, on and off medications, and then, of course, all the complications from dementia anyways on how to perceive things. So,
yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
hard for
hard.
everybody all around, for hard for the families because they couldn't, be there to ensure that their loved ones were cared for. Hard for the loved ones because they don't know why nobody comes.
mhm.
Hard on the staff because they don't have the benefit of the family coming in and helping because families help. They feed the residents, they keep them company, they keep them occupied,
Mhm.
so everything falls on them. That was a terrible, terrible time.
And
Hope it never happens again.
understanding distance, I think, is particularly hard too. That was the case with my father-in-law as well, but not understanding that one city or town isn't right next to each other, or 3 minutes away.
Hmm.
Everything gets skewed. And many times my mom would have like hallucinations, thinking that like the day before she died, and I was speaking to her on the phone, she thought my daughter and I were walking down the hall, and she was waiting for us to, arrive. So in some ways, that was kind of comforting that she thought I was there.
Hmm.
But, it was the distance thing is all off, of course.
Yeah, that's a challenge. So, is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners before we say goodbye?
Well, maybe I'll read this last poem because it
Okay,
kind of
love it.
um, is the COVID poem.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, so this is again, during COVID, especially, I would sit in my backyard and talk with my mother every day, sometimes a couple times a day on the phone. And there was a rabbit that would come into the backyard, and for some reason, and would just lie down and be very calming. And for some reason, I associated this rabbit with my mother, just seeing it. And at one point, I went into the backyard, and the rabbit had been attacked and killed. And it was very upsetting to me because because of that association. Um, Still life with rabbits and phone. It is only a rabbit hunkered down in this fenced-in backyard, 2,000 miles from her, 91 and frail, inside the locked assisted living apartment, not here. Each day, across invisible sound waves, my mother and I name and rename the hare, the bunny, the cottontail, the lapin, the breathing bundle of fur and ears, hopping in and out of our words, memories, what we string across miles and years. And I have fallen in love with the rabbit who returns each evening to a small patch of dying grass in the middle of central Pennsylvania, while my ailing mother in Arizona suggest as names Peter or Hoppy or Hope. It is only a rabbit, But one morning when my husband and son find it dragged and gnawed, its insides exposed to the bloody black world, my mouth goes dry. No way to shape the absence. Hair, bunny, cottontail, lappin, non-breathing bundle of fur and ears. Like this, time hops backwards and forwards. Hours sprawl in the dead grass. My mother forgets the hair, bunny, cottontail, lappin, doesn't recall the namings, the conversations. Are you sure? She whispers over the phone. Are you sure I'm in Phoenix? Are you certain it was a rabbit? When I next spy a small gray rabbit stretched out near the fence, I dial her number, exclaim, what shall we call him? What? Hair, bunny, cottontail, lappin, she lists. Then just like that, she lands again on hope.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. It was so lovely to meet you. Can you tell us where people can find your books?
Sure, they're kind of all the typical places. You can find Seeing Things. Here's what it looks like. The painting is by my daughter, so
Beautiful.
that's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
exciting as well. But the publisher is Wild House Publishers, so you can find it at their website. You can find it at Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes and Noble, and also at my website, which is www.marjoriemaddox.com. So www.marjoriemaddox.com.
Terrific. And are you on social media anywhere?
I'm on Facebook quite a bit, a little bit on X. I need to get on Instagram, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was lovely
Thank
to meet
you.
you and to hear your beautiful poetry. And thank you, Sheila, for coming along and sharing all of your insightful impressions about Marjorie's
Yes,
work.
thank
I
you.
know that
My
she was
pleasure.
thrilled to hear it.
Yeah.
It was great, great,
Congratulations
both of you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marjorie.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was good.
That was fun.
Thank you for listening to Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an All's Authors podcast. For more details on this episode, please see the show notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to it on whichever platform you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information on All's Authors, please visit allsauthors.com. While you're there, be sure to browse our online bookstore, where you will find hundreds of carefully vetted books on Alzheimer's and dementia. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please email your thoughts on the podcast to allsauthors@gmail.com. We are a 501c3 charitable organization, totally reliant on donations to do what we do. If our authors' stories move you, please consider contributing to our cause. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony.
Hi, I'm Susan Landice of All's Authors. If you're listening to this podcast, you may be looking for more support on your dementia journey. Please visit our website at allsauthors.com, where you'll find hundreds of carefully vetted resources written by caregivers and professionals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. You'll get knowledge, comfort, and support through books, blogs, podcasts, films, and more. That's allsauthors.com. Remember, you are not alone.